three very, very wonderful presentations. I want to start, and feel free to all of you to answer these, but we'll start with Alvin and your presentation on the overview effect. It's a very individual experience and one that is, you go to space and you have that experience. How do you translate it into a human-wide experience and share that with folks back on the Earth and the power that it has?
What a really perfect question to ask. Up until about maybe a year or so ago, I would have said we need to put more artists and poets in space, although I still maintain that. We're getting there. I think William Shatner communicated more what that experience was like in the first 5 minutes after he landed than the hundreds of astronauts and cosmonauts that had been in space before him. I think, as Dan has said, that why send humans into space, my argument since I've been there is that to come back and take everybody else into space with us when we come back to Earth. We've been telling stories as long as we've had language. We've had Homer and others out there who sit around fires. The idea is that you come back into the best of my ability as an engineer and a scientist and a person who doesn't have a degree in humanities to try and bring that experience back to as many people as I can, so it warmed my heart when you said I felt like I've been in space, because that's really what I'm trying to do, is that you paid probably a couple of $1 billion of taxpayers' money to put me in space. The least I could do is come back and share that experience. And I think that the better we get at telling those stories, the more we can bring that out to people who haven't been to space and who may not get there.
Yeah, I agree.
Wonderful. Do you, Dan or Chris, do you have any, personal anecdotes or anything, your overview effect moments that thought, like, wow, I have to bring this specific moment back with me to share?
No, for like virtually everybody that's gone, I experienced the same thing. The way I summarize it was when I came back from space and people want to know what changed or if anything changed. We in low Earth orbit get this privilege of seeing the planet with only physical boundaries instead of political boundaries, as Alvin said, and you look down and you go, I can't, I know that area. I know the people there are really angry at the people over there, and if they could just come up here and see what a beautiful place they live in and appreciate the river, maybe for a moment that would be, we could join in the beauty of our beautiful Earth. And I came back as such a proud citizen of the planet, and that's become my number one nationality, or my number one alliance is as an Earthling. And so that was sort of uplifting to me, that if I could share that enough, and if enough people could experience that, maybe the day-to-day problems can seem a little bit less, at least for a while.
Yeah, I just want to say that I was very glad that William Shatner was on my flight, because he's a professional speaker. It's his job, and he's really good at it, and I'm not. So when I came down, I was tongue-tied and confused, and I was shocked. And one of the cruel things about a suborbital flight is that it's long enough to shock you with the awe and not long enough for you to get used to it. And I don't know if you guys ever got used to what you were seeing there. Alvin, sounds like you didn't. And every time you were moved by the majesty of it. But I kind of got shocked, and I came down, and I'm still shocked to this day and still processing that experience. So to have William Shatner there who could, at least find the words in the moment. I was, giving my partner a hug at the same time. I was listening with one ear to what he was saying and going, wow, that's exactly how I feel. So it was really great to have him on board.
Wonderful. So going on the theme of getting more people into space, inspiring people, especially young folks, to be inspired by space. At NASA we use the term the Artemis generation. We're trying to inspire the Artemis generation. That's in the same way that the Apollo generation was, inspired by the Apollo program. When we're in a, sometimes multiple global crises happening at the same time, how do you keep young folks inspired about space when there's so much else going on? And I think everybody in this room is passionate about space, so it's easy to if it's already I want to work in space, this is my passion, but getting the whole entire world involved in what is going to be a very exciting next couple of decades in the space industry. How do you see things changing differently, or is there parallels between Apollo and Artemis generations in that regard?
I'll go first. So, first of all, as I said, I think the desire to fly and go to space is innate. You just have to figure out how to tap into that. And in the Artemis generation, as you say, our goal is to go live in space. And so instead of visit. And so now that opens up a whole wide array of things that we need to be smart about. And so I go out now, and when I talk to kids, I say, you know, we need great people at NASA. Of course, we need the physicists and the engineers and the chemists. But you know what? We're going to need artists to make the posters and convey the beauty of space. We need fashion designers to build the next spacesuits. We need food chefs and food scientists. We need lawyers. We need business people. You know, we're going to go live in space. We need everybody in life. So if you think you're not NASA-y because you don't particularly like science, well, I want you to start thinking about that differently. I want you to start thinking, I'm really good at this. If we're going to do anything about that in space, we're going to need your expertise in the future. So I think that we're trying to connect as many people that think NASA's cool. Maybe they don't think they're NASA-y, but we could use them. We're going to need them.
What do you think, Alvin?
Was it Mark Twain that said, history doesn't repeat, but it sure does rhyme? So I'm going to go back to the previous stanza, 1968. We were at war in Vietnam. Election year 1968 was a complete cataclysm. There was rioting in the streets of our major cities, social upheaval. We had a Cold War going on. And in December of that year, we sent Apollo 8 up, and we got the first picture of blue marble Earth from space. And I remember saying to all the crew members when they came back, thank you for saving 1968. We had some inspiration that there was other frontiers out there to explore, and that we really were all together on one planet out there. So again, we have, fast forward to now, we have a place where we're back in a place of social upheaval. We've got a war going on that's clearly very unpopular, even in its home, even in the aggressor's homeland. And you have people concerned about a pandemic that may be back on the resurge again. There's a place where, if there's anybody, nature or somebody telling us this, you've got to get off this rock, okay? We have a bad habit of wiping out the dominant species every few million years. How long do you think you have left of giving you all the tools you need to get off this island, get out there? When Europe got off out of its boundaries, it calmed down for a while. You talk about the rate in which we were killing each other before we got across the Atlantic Ocean. Of course, we exported our problems elsewhere. But we've got other planets out there that don't have indigenous people out there that we have to go kick off. We can go fight over those, but that's a bigger pie, and it solves our problems for a while until we get mature enough to handle them. That'd be my argument.
Yeah, my thoughts are always just to remind people, or even if they don't know, to let them know that space is more accessible than it's ever been before. Whether it be launching your own phone into space, or getting involved at NASA. I mean, there's so many ways that people can participate these days, and this really is the era of democratization of space. And so when I meet new people, I think a lot of people think that space is this other thing, and I'm like, it's not anymore. Like, it is part of the fabric of our society. It's how the world runs, and there's so many ways that you can get involved. You just need to start, and let me help you find some of them, whether that be getting an internship at NASA, or building their own project. I mean, in my day job, I'm actually very fortunate to be able to invest in a lot of space startup companies. That's another way. There are so many companies, there's thousands of them now, because that was unthinkable 10, 20 years ago. So there's just so many ways to get involved now, and it's easier and more accessible than it's ever been.
Yeah, we have, I think, time for one more question. So I'm going to tie into, how do we get to space, not just inspire the next generation to go. And I think Chris, you mentioned the blueprint to get to space, right? And I think for a long time, it's been a very specific set of, you get a degree in STEM, you maybe go to become a test pilot, apply to NASA. We're in this middle of a shift, right, where there's different ways to get to space now. Over the next decade or so, how do you see that blueprint of getting to space changing a bit, and what kind of paths can young folks, I would say, the high school students especially, start thinking about as far as their path to space? And Chris, if you want to...
Oh, I need a few seconds.
Oh, you're right.
Anyone else?
I'll start.
Yeah.
For years and years, I think I've been on the stump since I joined NASA back in 2000, telling people that by the time the people listening to me are my age, and a lot of them were kids about your age back then, that to go into space, you have to decide whether or not you want to fly in space with NASA or fly by some other means. If you want to fly with NASA, odds are we would not be in low Earth orbit or anywhere this side of the moon and by the 2020s. And that to go join NASA, you would have to present them with a book of your flying hours credentials that you've done with these commercial organizations, because NASA would be going out to places like Mars, the moons of Mars, maybe even the moons of other planets like Jupiter and Saturn. to go do those particular pieces out there. But the way into space would not be to do the standard, go join the Air Force, become a test pilot, become a doctor, and then and convince NASA that you're squeaky clean and you wash behind your ears every night. But just you've been in space, you've got thousands of hours there, and you can handle it. And that would be, I'd say, for going into space. And I still stand by that, except it's not that distant future. It's happening right now.
Dan, any thoughts?
Well, I am excited about commercial space, and we've seen great success in the last 2 years, right? And so I think that putting the fact that we're putting non-trained astronauts into space, I'll say, or non-professional astronauts into space, I hope is inspirational to people that for whatever reason don't think that path through NASA is the way. And there will be a time, might be in a couple of years, where more people are flying. It might be now, more people are flying, not on NASA, into space than with NASA. And so NASA might just be one of the pathways to space, not the pathway to space. And so I really hope that's the case. I think NASA has a role to fulfill, but just getting into space is not the primary purpose anymore.
Yeah, so Dan, something you said earlier about the different types of people that are going to be involved in the future, that's something I really resonate with. And so I remember there was one Space Generation Congress where one of the attendees was a bricklayer. And it was his first time coming to a space thing, and why did he come? He's like, you're going to want to build things on the moon.
Yeah. Right.
And I know how to do that. And he was amazing. And I think that's the future, where we as a species, the human race goes to space, all of us, and we have all of the things. There will be, if you're a dentist and you want to go to space, be the first space dentist. You know, there will ultimately one day, unfortunately, be a space lawyer who's actually in space. And it's probably a space accountant, too, to do our space taxes. I'm sorry. But yeah, I mean, if the human race is going to go to space, there has to be room for the human race to be there.
Right.
And that's who we are.
I agree with that. Even lawyers.
Well, I want to thank our 3 speakers and presenters and everybody in the audience for your questions and joining us today. I think, in 10 years with the passion in this room, there'll be more than 3 folks up here who have been to space. I'm sure there will be...
Make it happen.
Yeah, there'll be some folks in this audience, absolutely. So thank you again to Dan, Alvin, and Chris, and to everybody for attending the Human Spaceflight panel at SGS.